Welcome to episode 12 of Opolis Public Radio. Today I'm joined by Auryn Macmillan, my friend. Auryn is the product manager of Gnosis Conditional Token Framework. And after creating DAOHub in 2016 and retiring from his professional basketball career, which we're going to talk about, in 2017, Auryn's primary focus has been on the DAO ecosystem and Ethereum-based governance models and fund allocation in the ecosystem. So welcome, Auryn. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me.
I think I look taller than you right now, but I'm not, by a lot.
Yeah, I just need to drop my desk down a little bit and just raise it up.
Yeah, so I mentioned this in the introduction. You're a former professional basketball player.
Yeah.
I think everybody who sees you at a conference event is like, dude, who's the tall guy?
Yeah, I guess I stick out a little bit. For reference, for people I haven't met at a conference, I'm 6'8", which maybe doesn't come through on camera or on Twitter or wherever else you interact with me online.
No, it doesn't. Trust me.
Yeah. So at F Denver, when John and I first met, it was I think, John, you were pretty surprised, right? Or caught off guard at least.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, most of the guys that we meet in the space are, not that physically,
right,
endowed, I guess you could say that way, height-wise and size-wise. You're just like, just a tech guy, and here you are walking in. I'm just like, holy shnikes, man. I was like, what, did you play professional basketball or something? He's like, yeah, actually I did. So tell everybody a little bit about that. I haven't heard the whole story. So why don't you tell us?
I guess where to start on that. I played some college basketball in the US for a little school called Gardner-Webb University. They're based in Boiling Springs in North Carolina, tiny little town. But they're a little D1 school. Played there from 2006 through 2010. And then from 2010 to 2017, played for a variety of different clubs, mostly back home in Australia. So for 3 years in Australia's National League, which is our kind of mini version of the NBA. Paychecks are not nearly as good, but it's a really, really great competition. So I played for a few clubs there, the Wollongong Hawks, the Melbourne Tigers and Melbourne United. And then also played for a team out in Germany for a season, a team out in the UK for a season, and then various kind of second tier teams in Australia as well. So I kind of got to travel around a lot in Australia, kind of playing for different clubs, and then a little bit internationally as well.
That's really cool. So that had to be a little exhausting, though, traveling around and doing all that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, but I don't know. Basketball's I guess just professional sports in general, like you tend to have a reasonable amount of kind of downtime, recovery time. And travel, I guess, is just kind of part of it.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, so it's exhausting on the one hand, but then you get a reasonable amount of time to recover from that exhaustion as well. That's kind of built into your scheduling. Because it's really
I was going to make a joke about the traveling in the crypto space, but we don't do that right now.
Yeah, right. I mean, no one does. The professional sports players don't do it either. The NBA was locked up in the bubble for months. And most leagues just are not playing at all. But yeah, I mean, actually the thing that was probably more tiring was for a number of years I was playing back-to-back seasons. Australia's first league would play through the summer, and then the second tier league would play through the winter. And so I just go back-to-back year round. And that was pretty exhausting. Just never having an off season.
Yeah. Okay. So you decided to hang up the shoes and come to. So tell us a little bit about your transition into the blockchain space, what are we even calling it nowadays? The crypto space, blockchain space, Ethereum space? Who knows? Web3, whatever. How did you get here?
So I originally discovered Bitcoin in late 2013. I was just watching the news and something came up about like the deep web, the dark web. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to go poke around on it. And so downloaded Tor and started poking through a bunch of onion sites. And there's a few marketplaces and stuff up on Tor, and every one of them, everything was denominated in Bitcoin. And so I'm like, what is this Bitcoin stuff? What is it worth? If I see something as 1 Bitcoin or 10 Bitcoin or 100 Bitcoin or whatever it was, what does that mean? And so that's kind of where I fell into the cryptocurrency rabbit hole. It's just like I stumbled across it on some Tor marketplaces and kind of needed to figure out what it was. And it was kind of interesting to me at the time, but I didn't really click immediately. And it wasn't until maybe like a year and a half later that it kind of really clicked more. And I had been kind of passively paying attention to it, but it was Vitalik's kind of early blog posts on Ethereum, on the concept of Ethereum, that really made the power of blockchain technology really kind of click and make sense to me. In particular, the idea of DAOs. And so I got involved with Ethereum kind of early on, and then the DAO project in 2016 was the thing that kind of really got me actively involved. And that kind of, I guess, kicked off my transition from playing basketball to working in the kind of blockchain / Ethereum space. It was essentially, I started a forum with a friend, DAOHub, which kind of ended up becoming the kind of de facto home for the DAO. And from there, through the kind of meteoric rise and absolutely catastrophic fall of the DAO.
in like epic form.
Right. So through that whole process, I kind of got this baptism of fire of kind of how to build and support a community, and then I guess made a whole bunch of connections to various people in the space, and I guess was able to kind of leverage that experience into some freelancing gigs and eventually some full-time gigs, which has kind of now landed me in my role at Gnosis. I actually first freelanced with Gnosis back in kind of 2016, 2017, helping to set up a bunch of their community infrastructure prior to their original token launch and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun to go now full circle back to Gnosis and be working with them again. Very
cool. So you're referring to the actual DAO, like the DAO.
Right.
Tell everybody a little bit about that experience. Like, I mean, you were front and center with that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was an incredible experience. I mean, highs and lows. Obviously, it was a roller coaster. I don't know. I guess I don't know where to jump in with that. It's like, for me, in terms of like my professional development, it was probably the best thing you could ask for in terms of like really learning how bad things can get and how to deal with all of that kind of stuff. For the ecosystem, it was obviously pretty, I guess, detrimental at the time, and I guess arguably kind of for all time. And it was obviously a lot of people were affected pretty negatively by it. So it was a tough thing to kind of be a part of and to try to help people deal with. For anyone that's not familiar with it, I guess, the DAO was a project back in 2016. It was kind of the first attempt at a DAO kind of being launched on the Ethereum blockchain. And it raised an astronomical amount of money, I think something to the tune of about $160 million worth of Ether at one point. And then shortly after, someone found and started to attempt to exploit a vulnerability in the code, which basically allowed them to initiate kind of siphoning off funding from the DAO. And the next kind of month was a series of kind of rapid fire approaches to mitigate that, which eventually concluded with the hard fork that birthed Ethereum Classic,
right,
along with mainnet Ethereum. So as you can imagine, that whole kind of process, there was a whole bunch of people needing help and support, and just a place to vent, I guess. And so DAOHub kind of became that.
Yeah, what was your opinion on the on the fork on the classic folks? You know, there was a lot of, I guess you could call it dogmatic reasons why, you know, the belief systems of, you know, code is law, you know, this happened, we shouldn't fork it, you know, we shouldn't undo the natural events of the market. Like, what's your personal opinions on that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously I was very heavily biased at the time, and still am, because I had a significant amount of my own funds in the DAO. I believed in that project really strongly. And so I don't think I can ever really give a properly kind of unbiased opinion on it. But I guess my argument would be that code is law is misunderstanding what blockchains are. And realistically, like it's the consensus mechanism that is law. And so if your consensus mechanism allows for forking, essentially, like if the community decides that what happened was wrong for whatever reason, then that is kind of what's law. And you have the ability, obviously, to fork away, or to maintain some other version of the fork. And if people follow, they follow. If they don't, they don't. But I think that's the big maybe misunderstanding that a lot of people seem to have about how blockchains work in general. It
seems like it's the tyranny of the extremes, you know, like when people talk about code is law, you know, that sort of presupposes that like we're going to get it all right perfectly, and that just we're going to, you know, just take our hands off this entirely, and that there's just, you know, there's no changing it ever. Like it's just going to be how it is. And that just seems to be an extreme caricature of perhaps even I wouldn't even say idealistic or utopian outcome. It seems almost dystopian in some ways. Like if you actually play that out to quote perfection, it seems like it could backfire quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's ultimately a naive way to design systems. You know, systems that are entirely immutable, that can't be changed, tend to eventually fail. And so you need to have some ability to adapt, and the Ethereum blockchain, as with every blockchain that I'm aware of, has some ability to adapt through forking. And again, that's what kind of drives that is the consensus mechanism, the will of the community, or the will of the people kind of doing that role of consensus. You know, in the case of Bitcoin, that's miners. In the case of Ethereum, that's miners, soon to be stakers. And then on top of that, the will of the people participating in the network and kind of, you know, willing to hold the token.
So we have a comment from one of our friends, Matt Lockyer, who says, "Code is law. Down with the old models, futocracy, ZK sovereignty." So I just figured I'd give Matt a shout out there for trolling us on our Q&A, which is a reminder. If anybody does have a question, legitimate or just want to troll us, that's totally fine. The troll box is open. You can go to the Q&A, drop your question in there. We'll answer it on air if we can. If we have time, we're going to do some Q&A at the end, so feel free to populate your questions now. And yeah, oh, we know, Matt. Don't worry. He said it's just jokes, just having fun. It's good to see you, Matt. So anyway, back to the conversation here, Auryn. So you said that you've come full circle now. Tell us a little bit about your work at Colony and what you did there, and then how you kind of came full circle back to Gnosis and working on the conditional token framework.
Yeah, so I mean, originally when I was freelancing with Gnosis several years ago, again, I was just kind of setting up community infrastructure, forums, and chat groups and all that kind of stuff, and just helping to, I guess, seed the community. I guess from there, I took on a community director role at First Blood, which is an esports company, and I was there for a year and a half, 2 years, and enjoyed that role, kind of setting up, same thing, their community, running a bunch of esports tournaments and all that kind of thing. And then Jack from Colony reached out at one point, I guess October in 2018, and offered me a role with Colony, kind of doing the same thing in preparation for Colony's mainnet launch. And so that was a really great opportunity for me to get kind of back into the DAO space, which is obviously what had really gotten me passionate about Ethereum and the blockchain space as a whole. So my work at Colony was essentially around kind of helping to build the community, get their product in people's hands so that they could start to kind of iterate on it and work towards a kind of functional DAO framework. That development process took kind of a little bit longer than what we'd initially hoped. We ran into some pretty big issues with essentially like the data layer of an application that's kind of fully decentralized. Spent a lot of time trying to get this technology, OrbitDB, which is essentially treats kind of IPFS as a database. And it's a really cool piece of technology, but for an application like Colony, it struggled to kind of keep pace, and we had a whole lot of issues with kind of data replication, where you would want, you try to load someone's profile or you try to load a Colony, and kind of tasks and kind of data associated with it just would never show up. And so at one point we had to make this decision to just kind of rip that whole thing out and put in kind of a centralized metadata layer, kind of just a Mongo database to essentially handle that load, make this kind of compromise on a small piece of the architecture being centralized to get the app to being more functional. That all got implemented, and then we kind of really ramped up getting people onboarded and got to a point where there was a good number of colonies functioning. And now, since I kind of left Colony a few months back, they've shifted gears again now to going much more, I guess, back towards the more kind of fully decentralized route and really enabling much more permissionless open DAOs. Colony is a really interesting DAO framework for anyone who's not familiar with it. It's this kind of permissionless and I guess meritocratic DAO framework where your influence in the DAO is, or in the organization, the Colony, is meant to be essentially a reflection of the amount of work that you've contributed. You earn native tokens from the Colony for doing the work. Along with that native token, you earn reputation. And then this reputation score has this kind of constant decay function. So all of the kind of governance decisions are based on this reputation score. And over time, because of that decay function, you kind of normalize the reputation distribution towards, I guess it kind of optimizes the reputation distribution for the people that have kind of recently contributed, which is a really nice kind of quality. The people that are actively contributing kind of earn more influence over the organization, but you can kind of separate the idea of control and ownership, where when I say ownership, I guess I mean like the ability to receive rewards from the activities of the Colony. So if the Colony is making kind of financial distributions or token distributions, it would be based on your token holdings and your reputation. So kind of a happy middle ground between contributions over all time and recent contributions. And then if you're making governance decisions, it would be based just on reputation. So much more optimized for kind of recent contributions. That's I guess a really quick high-level overview of what Colony is and what I did there. But yeah, more recently have moved over to Gnosis full-time. What I'm doing there is working with the Conditional Tokens Framework, which is the underlying technology for prediction markets like Omen and Polymarket. The Conditional Tokens Framework is really, really cool. It's essentially like logic, or tokenized logic. So you create a condition, will Trump get elected in 2020? And then you can define outcomes, yes and no. And from that, you can then kind of split collateral into corresponding conditional tokens. So you can take, say, DAI, split it into collateral, so you get a yes DAI and a no DAI token that are redeemable for DAI in the case that the condition or the question kind of resolves to that outcome. So if Trump gets elected, yes DAI is worth 1 DAI. If Trump does not get elected, no DAI is worth 1 DAI. And so that's obviously from that, the idea of building out kind of prediction markets is a fairly straightforward step where you just set up an automatic market maker between those two tokens, and then essentially the relative price of those tokens corresponds to the odds of that event happening. So if it's trading, say, 60-40 one way, then you say the odds of that event are 60-40. But some other kind of really interesting use cases there are things like, again, kind of this idea of conditional logic, where you can actually set up kind of like if this, then that kind of scenarios like we've just described. But you can also set up like if A or B, then this thing's worth something. So it's like you can create basically collections of outcomes. So say you have a question that has 5 different outcomes. You could make a collection that is just A, but then you can also do one that's a collection that combines, say, B, C, D, and E. And that outcome collection can kind of become one conditional token. So you're saying like, if A occurs this, but if B, D, C, B, C, D, or E occurs, then that token is kind of valuable. And then the other really neat part of that is that you can kind of stack these on top of each other. So you can create some more kind of complex logic where you can say like, if this event occurs and that event occurs, then this token is actually worth something. So you can say like, if Trump gets elected and this, I don't know, and what's the name of the justice he nominated? I forget.
Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah. Okay. So if Trump gets elected and Amy gets appointed to the Supreme Court, then this thing is actually worth something. So like you can kind of stack these things on top of each other.
So it's what do they call that in the betting world? They call that something like a string bet or something, but like
parlay.
Parlay. Yeah, it's a parlay.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like a 6-way parlay. You know, it's like, hey, let's see, Amy Coney Barrett's going to get, you know, confirmed Trump wins, the Democrats take the Senate, and blah, blah, blah. You could like layer it all on top of each other, and you could basically have a parlay.
Yeah, exactly. So you can create these kind of really much more complex positions out of a bunch of independent markets or independent.
Oh, that's interesting.
Conditions.
So okay, so tell us what you're doing. I got how it works. That's really interesting. I mean, it's basically creating like a little token economy for prediction markets that sort of works unto itself, right? So like, it's just all sorts of different risk blending and bet blending and.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one of the things that's kind of is possible. It hasn't actually been implemented in an existing prediction market yet. Like there's no front end now that kind of exposes that functionality that's available on the contract level. So all of the front ends, Omen and Polymarket and all that, right now give you kind of one layer. No one's exposed that kind of combinatorial outcomes yet, but hopefully soon. We'll see. I'm not aware of anyone that's implementing it yet, but it's something that's we're kind of really excited to see happen. I think like the more interesting applications of that further down the road, like the thing that really gets me excited about it is actually kind of, again, circling back to the kind of DAO concept. And another concept that I read about in one of Vitalik's really early posts is futarchy, which is this concept of kind of governance by prediction markets, where you have say a proposal for an organization, and you base whether or not you actually pass that proposal, whether or not you execute on it, you base that on a prediction market's prediction of the kind of impact or the outcome of that proposal. So you could say, like, say you've got an organization, it has shares or tokens or whatever it is, and you say the goal of this organization is basically to maximize the value of this token. So when you make decisions, typically, you have some board of some management kind of tier in the organization that kind of makes the high level decisions about what the organization should be doing. And they presumably do so with the intent of helping to raise that price for for shareholders or whatever it is. In this case, you would kind of put that responsibility into a prediction market where you say, will proposal A essentially, will it have more than X impact on the price of the token? Or will, if this proposal passes, will the token, the shares, whatever it is, be worth more than X? And if the market, after some period of analysis is indicating that it will, then that proposal passes. If the market indicates that it will not, then that proposal fails.
Have I ever told you about my idea for the implementation of crowd-based governance for like professional sports?
I have not. Let's hear it.
So I grew up a big baseball fan, right? So my dad used to take me to the ballpark. We used to sit in the press box when he would take stats for the people that needed the stats, right? So he would be the one who actually created the box scores for the newspapers and whatnot when I was a kid.
Oh, cool.
And so I got really sort of deep into like the decision making in baseball games, right? So like you see how people make pitching changes and maybe even pinch runners, pinch hitters, whatever, like just even personnel changes before the game, right? So like how's my lineup going to stack up against the team that we're playing, the starting pitcher, the relief pitchers, when they come in, all that kind of stuff. Well, wouldn't it be cool if, as a season ticket holder for, say, the Rockies, I could sit in my seat and from an app, I could actually participate in the in-game decision-making via some version of a prediction market by using tokens that I'm allocated by my season ticket purchases. And I can actually vote on like who the relief pitcher is going to be or to replace the pitcher or whatever it might be. And there's some blend of governance decision-making that comes in. The manager still has some power, but then once there's enough power that comes from the crowd, and this is a big incentive to actually show up to the game, right? Because you wouldn't be able to do this just from your house. You'd actually have to come to the game. So that would incentivize like, all sorts of things like buying more beers and hot dogs and all other things. But this could be, you could create your own little economy inside the park, including decision-making from the stands. It
That's
would really,
cool.
to me, it would democratize the experience, and it would be a huge incentive to come, because you know how it is. I mean, how many times have I sat in my chair at the Rockies and like complained about the pitcher they're putting in? Why are you putting in McGee? What are you doing? He's going to blow it. And then he does. It's I mean, even off-season, participation with the general manager and evaluating free agents and things like I think you could gather a massive amount of intelligence on a group scale, because there's like really smart people that are in the fandom that just never get to contribute anything as far as that sort of knowledge share.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a really interesting concept. I think one of the real challenges with something like that, there's probably a few, but one of them would be just like real-time responsiveness in a game situation. Like, I guess the more inputs you have, generally the slower a decision is. So it's like it would be pretty difficult, I imagine, to coordinate around actually making good decisions in the context of a game. That said, I mean, there's been things like Twitch plays Pokemon, and Twitch plays just about every game where you actually hand over control of the game to all of the participants in the Twitch chat. And so
right.
Twitch plays Pokemon, you essentially enter a down arrow in chat, and the guy on screen moves down. But what it does is like take the average of all of the inputs over some period of time.
And it basically does whatever the highest frequency of input is.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have this literally thousands of people all collectively playing this one game. And so it sounds like this is kind of what you're suggesting there, is like having thousands of people, all of the spectators collectively playing this one game of baseball, or playing kind of this game of managing or coaching a game of baseball.
Well, I just think it would be, you see, there's a, and this doesn't even begin to talk about the actual, the turning a Major League Sports franchise into a cooperative of sorts, like a DAO or its own sort of community-owned group. I mean, think about Green Bay Packers, and then amplify that by like 100 as far as actual involvement in the not just the operations, but the actual gameplay, right? And then you gamify the entire stadium, right, to like incentivize people to like become consumers of different things of the ballpark and whatnot. I just think that from a when you look at the way the ownership model is, you got some wealthy guy who sits in the owner's box. He's got some dipshit GM. Sometimes they're good, but a lot of times you get these guys that don't know, they're not really that good, or whatever reason their decisions have not panned out to seem good.
No, and I mean, I know about that firsthand. I've had some fantastic GMs at some of the clubs that I've played for, and I've had some really horrible ones.
Exactly. So like, you're sort of there's a major point of failure there. And it's like, well, why would you not want to use the collective intelligence of your fan base? That some of them might be not that smart, but there's a lot of really smart people that follow this stuff like religiously, and that are very intelligent. And it seems like you could use a collaborative approach to really, yes, technical implementation. There's a lot of issues here, and I'm not even going to get into the details of it. But idealistically, or just as an idea, to me, it sounds really interesting, because I know why I go to the ballpark, or anybody might go to a basketball game or a hockey game or any of these, soccer games or whatever. And like, I could see, the passion that people have as fans, being able to actually influence outcomes and like being rewarded or not for, your contributions. So I think it could be very interesting.
There's two things I want to touch on there. I'll come back to the outcomes in a minute. The first thing is just like the executives, and I think like ideologically, I love the idea of opening up that kind of power to the crowd. In reality, though, like I think there's actually some functions that like an executive has or performs that can't be performed kind of by a crowd. And the big one is just like secrecy. Like there's a whole bunch of negotiation that goes on behind the scenes that you can't let slip, because you're dealing with sensitive information. You're dealing with trading a player who you want to get off the roster, or you're dealing with negotiating someone's salary, and you have to maintain whatever leverage you can. And DAOs, crowdsourced information, is horrible at keeping secrets. So those kind of functions, you can't. Well, I don't think you can realistically outsource to a crowd.
No, you're probably right. So let's transition to talking about sort of mechanisms that might protect those kinds of features, because I think we're doing something similar at Opolis, right? Where we've got this sort of board of stewards.
That's one of the reasons I like Opolis's design, is because it recognizes that fact. It recognizes the fact that there is value in having pieces of the organization that are able to have some kind of executive power, and not necessarily like executive power that they can make unilateral decisions that totally change everything, but executive power in that they're charged with a responsibility to make things happen, and not necessarily have to run everything in public all the time.
Right.
And again, I'm very much in favor of fully public organizations where they make sense, but there are situations where organizations are dealing with sensitive information, and it's a strategic advantage to be able to keep them secret. And I think that's one of the big challenges that fully open organizations are going to have, is like outcompeting organizations that can have secrets.
Yeah, I agree, and I think this is the criticism that I probably have for like fully decentralized organizations is, at scale, you have coordination problems and major secrecy problems, because you don't really have anybody, what I would say is stewarding sort of sacred functions or information that can sort of protect the benevolence of the ecosystem. At some point, it seems like there's exploitation that can happen with that type of like full decentralization. So like, and in the case of Opolis, of course, we've opted for an official legal structure in the form of an LCA. That's a limited cooperative association, for those that don't know, in conjunction with a board of stewards, which has a specific charge and role, and anybody sitting on that board has to be a member of the cooperative. And then we layer on the decentralized governance components for decision-making and core issues that members actually care about, versus like either silly things that they don't care about, or I would say benevolence matters that the board really needs to deal with.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's a good kind of design to have those features in place, like where you can actually elect some board or some kind of group, some entity to represent you in functions that can't be public or need to be executed on quickly, more quickly than you could do in the public, or by kind of crowdsourcing those decisions. It's like with every kind of decision, there's or every kind of governance model, there's trade-offs, and I think this with kind of fully public organizations, that's one of the trade-offs is one, generally speed, and then two, the ability to keep secrets. And so these kind of hybrid models where you attempt to maintain the best of both worlds, I think are a really, really powerful thing.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of this, actually. Like I'm very, I see efforts that are like the fully decentralized world. I honor it, I admire it, and I respect it. I just feel like it's almost a little wishful thinking at this stage to like really scale something fully decentralized, because we're so used to it. Not, number one, just behaviorally, we're not used to it. And then number two, just systems wise and technology maturity seems to be a little off in the distance. Like, even the example that you talked about, that native data layer in a fully decentralized world, is still not really that solved. I mean, it's coming, it's getting better, but metadata and storing private and having any sort of privacy on a public chain around metadata, forget it. Like, it's still not there. So I think there is the sort of progressive decentralization approach, which I'm a big fan of. So long as you have the ability to sustain the two things, which is sustainability, which is either some sort of revenue mechanism or just some sort of long-term support system for the ecosystem. And then secondly is the maintenance of benevolence. So you can't set up any infrastructure that could, in theory, undermine the benevolence of the entire ecosystem for its membership.
Right.
If you do that, then you're just doing what everybody else has done historically.
Right. I see Scott Sanderson asked a question here.
You want to go ahead and answer that? So you want to read it off? And hey, Scott, good to see you, man.
There's a crypto company called Start9. They said their name is a reference to Twitch gaming, where the crowd plays a game. Do you understand the Start9 reference? And it's from Twitch plays Pokemon, obviously, and it's essentially you could mash the start key to switch the mode of the game from like democracy mode to anarchy mode, or vice versa, I believe. And so I think that's the reference, which is pretty neat. I wasn't aware of the company, but that's cool.
Democracy mode to anarchy mode. I'm sure that seems pretty fun in the moment.
Yeah. And I think like the difference there is like, I think anarchy mode, like it just mashes the buttons as they come in. So it's like every single person who inputs, if I recall correctly, every single person who inputs, their command gets sent through. And so like the characters just go nuts. Whereas democracy mode is like, it polls that average periodically, every second or whatever it is. And so you get more kind of predictable output. And I guess more of an ability for the crowd to actually play the game.
Man, they come up with so many crazy like game designs on this stuff. I think it's fabulous.
Yeah. Before I said I wanted to come back to like incentives. And so like one of the really interesting things with the baseball idea is kind of how the incentives align and whether they actually align for good outcomes in terms of the baseball team, like whether they actually align for the baseball team winning. Like I could imagine a situation there where the home team, like your crowdsourced game or your crowdsourced team is going and visiting another stadium, and so now all of the home team goes and downloads your app and starts voting for you to go and put in all of your bench players and throw the game. Or vice versa, like if you only do it at home games, then the away team that's coming in, they bring all their fans along and they download your app, and now they start making you throw the game. So like alignment of incentives is really important when you think about.
The whole cadence of that incentive structure would take quite a bit of time to, I think, iron it out to make sure you collapse all of the potential attack vectors. Because if anybody is wily about how they do things, it's opposing fans, right? Like they would totally exploit the system. If they could.
Well, and so that's where I think Futaki is actually a really interesting model for that, where
exactly
align the incentives there for essentially like winning the game. So you make these combinations of markets. You have one market that is essentially like will the home team win this game, and then every other question that you want to put in, every other decision that you want to make, kind of spins up a new market, and you're combining them. So it's like, if we put in Jimmy, will we win the game? If we, and so like you just have this constant string of these like combinatorial markets that are based on that are essentially making the decisions based on whether or not that decision will have a positive or a negative impact on the outcome of the game, or whether it's kind of predicted to have a positive or negative impact on the outcome of the game. So you kind of shift the incentive from the will of the crowd or the kind of the want of the crowd to the crowd's prediction of the outcome of that decision. And when I say like their prediction, their willingness to put money on it. So I think something like
almost like a prediction market betting on the decisions of the actual like team management, and like, it could be interesting. Could be really interesting. So before we run out of time here, I want to get back to just a couple of things about the Opolis stewardship, your involvement, and like tell everybody about that. So you're on the board of stewards.
Yep. Really excited about it.
Yeah. And so tell us how you see that, like, and you're a member. So you've got all the hallmarks of you're a freelance guy, you work with people overseas, you've got like, you live in the States, you got to have your little support system. So the employment commons is a good fit for you. I mean, just functionally. Then now your involvement is on the board and all of that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, the employment commons, I immediately see the value of it because I guess to put it really bluntly, I came from a country, Australia, that has pretty great universal healthcare. It's not the best in the world, but it's decent. And moving to America, having to deal with the private health insurance industry here, I've had a really, really rough time with it when I first moved here, kind of as a non-college athlete. And had to try to track down health insurance. I got stuck in this really, really terrible health insurance plan, and it cost me thousands of dollars in medical bills outside of the health insurance premium, because I didn't realize how bad it was, just because I didn't kind of understand it, having come from I guess more of a universal healthcare system. And then having kind of switched health insurance providers a few times as I've moved through different roles and stuff, it's become, kind of, again, pretty burdensome. And so I immediately see the value of Opolis and of the employment commons just from that, like being able to kind of create some stability in what health insurance providers I'm able to kind of select, and then also obviously the price of them. Like this is another thing that was really foreign to me coming from Australia, was just the idea of like these radically different rates that you can get through the kind of collective bargaining through like having an organization who can buy in bulk health insurance as opposed to having to buy it as an individual. So that I find kind of really valuable as well. And then on top of that, obviously with the commons, there's a whole bunch of other services that I will more than likely utilize. But yeah, haven't kind of dove much deeper than past the health insurance and like accounting and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the thing that kind of really draws me to it, aside from like the obvious financial saving and kind of stability in health insurance, is just that I'm very much into this idea of kind of platform cooperatives. Platform cooperatives or platform cooperativism, where you have these platforms that are owned and kind of run by the people using it, or the kind of people kind of contributing value to it. And so the example I always like to give is like, imagine an Uber where the drivers are stakeholders in the organization. They own part of the organization.
Right.
They have some governance rights in the organization. That's an Uber that probably wouldn't be having all of these massive court battles right now, because it would have had an opportunity.
We would have had mechanisms to align the long-term incentives, right? Or the outcomes, the desirable outcomes would have been stayed aligned instead of diverge over time and growth, right? I mean,
right, exactly.
It's inevitable when you have a boardroom in a traditional C Corp who wants something different than what the actual participants in the ecosystem want.
Right, exactly. And so that's the thing kind of ideologically that really draws me towards the employment commons. Is I see it as a really tangible and kind of pioneering example of a platform cooperative.
Yeah, well, not to mention the possibility for mass user adoption. They don't even know they're participating in something that might be crypto-y or blockchain-y, because most everything that exists right now is very crypto native and like not that friendly to like just average people that might want to think about using something like this.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in it from that point of view. Crypto has been, as a whole, has been searching for, those use cases which are going to kind of help it break into mainstream usage. And I think that the only way that that's really going to happen is when it starts being embedded into other systems that essentially abstract that away, provide 100%. Some value that is not there's not contingent on it necessarily being a blockchain-based solution, but where that blockchain-based solution kind of enhances or enables some functionality that otherwise wouldn't.
Exactly. So we just got a couple minutes left. So before we say adieu, we have the launch of our token paper coming out next Tuesday. You want to give anybody a sneak hint on anything that might be coming? Right.
I mean, yeah, it's a good read. I don't know. I'm not sure what to hint at there. That's I don't know. You caught me off guard with that one. I'm not sure. Like, it's well worth diving into. If you haven't checked out any of the kind of documentation that exists on the employment commons yet, then this will be a really great kind of primer into really getting a feel for how it works and how it aligns incentives. I think that's until really diving into this and helping contribute to this, I didn't really have a full picture of how that alignment worked. And so this was kind of really informative on that.
Yeah, no, it's a grand. I mean, we could call it a grand experiment. I mean, the interesting thing is the underlying business, even just as an employment cooperative, will work perfectly fine. It's just, the long-term value creation, sustainable alignment of incentives, and just really sharing in success and or failure of, what we all do jointly in this commons is really, the larger question, right? So it's going to be a really, really fun experiment. I don't think it's as much of an experiment as we might be thinking it might be, but I mean, it is, because no one's ever done it, but it's also, I think it's taken us a long time to kind of distill it down to really simple kind of mechanisms and, keep it keep it down the fairway so people can understand it. But I'll give a quick hint. So let's put it this way. You're going to want to join the Employment Commons sooner rather than later, because the incentives are heavily skewed towards early adopters. So anybody who's on the fence about whether to join the Employment Commons or not, I would take a hard look at it. I mean, open enrollment's coming up. You've got to be making healthcare choices and decisions anyway. It's free for 12 months. You really have nothing to lose. And, it's really a set it and forget it kind of thing. So once you get kind of onboarded and everything, it's just really the mechanism and engine that drives your employment, your paycheck, your compliance, all the other necessary evils that we got to do with, kind of our commercial lives. But yeah, it's pretty cool. So that's next Tuesday for everybody who's wondering when that's going to be. So keep an eye out for our Twitter channel, our Twitter feed, and all of our other social channels. We'll be posting it on our website and also through Medium. So check it out, and feel free to engage the conversation. We'll also be standing up some much more active community channels. So we'll have a Discord and Telegram that will be open and available, so you can pop in your questions, and we'll go from there. So, Auryn, it's great to see you, man.
Yeah, this has been fun.
And just thank you for your input and wisdom on all of this game design and just thinking through all of the mechanisms. Quite frankly, it takes teamwork to make the team work, and I think just the board's involvement in this really made this possible. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, thanks for looping me in on it. It's been really interesting to kind of watch it take shape and to have what little bit of input I've had on it, which has been nice.
Yeah, well, it's great. Well, I look forward to working more with you, and we'll see you on the flip. So for everyone else, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Opolis Public Radio. Remember to subscribe to our Opolis YouTube channel for more videos like this, and wherever you subscribe to your podcast, don't forget to subscribe there as well if you prefer the audio version. If you're a freelancer, gig worker, solopreneur, entrepreneur, or you just wanting to get in on something cool and fresh, check out opolis.co. That's opolis.co, and find out more about the Employment Commons and becoming a self-sovereign worker. We'll see you on the flip side. That's all we got for today. Bye.